Welcome back, Los Angeles. This is the LA Football Show, Monday Night Live Chargers Chat Edition. Talking Chargers draft with my guy, Jamal. We're going to get all into it, give grades. If we have time, we'll get into some undrafted free agents, but most likely we'll do that next episode later in the week because we only got 30 minutes before we jump into college. So, these things are fast hitting and fun. So, my man, Jamal Madney, I know we did Rams earlier, but welcome to the Chargers Show. How we doing? How we feeling?
Doing well, Ryan. Excited to get into it with the Bold fam here. And, we were rapid fire there just the episode before. 14 picks down to 7. So
Yes.
An opportunity to even catch our breath a little bit here for this 30 minutes. But excited to kind of get deeper into these 7 guys.
Yeah, exactly. We got some breathing room. We can analyze a little more. I mean, I'm impressed we made it through 14 picks with the Rams in 30 minutes. So this will be nice. Show as always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So draft weekend was fantastic. Somewhere near 54 million viewers across all 3 days, which is insane. Blows other championships out of the water, and it's a draft, which is nuts. That's just how big this thing has gotten. KC showed out, looked like a blast out there in Kansas City. The barbecue looked good. Chargers, 7 picks, 1 in each round. No trades, per usual of the Chargers and Tom Telesco. Stay pretty pat, go pretty chalk in terms of just where they sit and where they kind of align and whatnot. So, let's just jump into it. I know we quickly, Jamal, well, not quickly, but we before day 2 started, we did an episode on Quentin Johnston and on the pick. And so some of you listening may have heard before. Again, if you're in here live, jump in the chat, drop any questions. If you're listening to the replay or on podcast, you can text us. Text BOLTS, BOLTS to 31032. Let us know your thoughts or questions, and we'll get to them. But now that 4 days, I think, math is terrible. Now that 4 days have passed, obviously we'll start with the first round and move forward. How's your thoughts on the Quentin Johnston pick? Still not a fan of it? Has it resonated a little more? How are you feeling about it?
I mean, can it get worse? I mean, it's sort of been one of those things, Ryan. I mean, look, I understand that they needed to sort of fortify the receiver room a little bit, but of the guys that were on the board there, Ryan, I still don't quite understand Quentin Johnston. A great player, 2-time all first team Big 12, 60 catches, 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns last year with TCU. Obviously, their premier receiver on that team, but Duggan did a great job mixing the ball around. Got absolutely manhandled in the national championship game against an NFL quality secondary. But when you look at who you have in Allen and Williams, there's just so much overlap with him and Williams. I just don't quite understand it. And when you needed kind of the breakaway speed and the kind of that playmaking ability, and you had guys like Mims and Dell and Addison, on the board, I don't understand why it was Quentin Johnston. And then when you talk about a couple can't miss tight end prospects, in my opinion, in Meyer and Kincaid, I mean, all of that was sort of at your disposal to go with Johnston. I still don't understand it, and there was such an opportunity here, Ryan, in my opinion, with who fell, at 21 to really make this a home run draft. And they just whiffed on this first pick. And it's been kind of recovery mode after this pick, in my opinion. And I think they've done a fairly decent job in that recovery mode, but it was behind the 8 ball. I still don't understand the pick.
Yeah. So I still would have gone with one of those defenders that fell, Nolan Smith, Brian Branch, one of those. But at receiver, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm actually kind of liking it more afterwards. And I didn't like it at the time, really, when it first came across. Obviously, we're big Jordan Addison fans and Zay Flowers. I'm not huge on Zay Flowers, but he was a big name there. Jathan Smith and Jigbo went the pick before, so he was off the board. But I think more of it, Justin, I won't spend a ton of time just because we did talk, about it at length kind of right afterwards. But, I'm kind of understanding it more in terms of what I see that they're adding to that room, and then what they did obviously later in the draft, adding speed, which we'll get to here in a bit. Now, If they never added who they added in the 4th round, who was his running mate in TCU, then I would definitely dislike it more, because then they really avoided that entire need. But the fact they got both, I don't know if people love that they got 2 receivers there, but to me, you're setting yourself up for the future with those 2 guys if you were to move on from an Allen or a Williams. So, we got to see this play out, but I actually am liking it more, Jamal. So
What did you see on film with Johnston? Why you like it?
I think there's some versatility still. I think he has decent breakaway speed, more than his 4.49 40 or so it dictates. Obviously, we talked about the Michigan game, where he's able to do in the flats there. Good size, but he's not, he's a better route runner than Mike Williams. He's not just I love Mike Williams, but he's not a good route runner. I mean, he's got about as slow as feet as you can have. If you just watch the drills in training camp, you can't get much slower feet than that. And Johnston certainly has more ability in that regard. And so he's got, to me, and you probably watch more film on him, so I could be off here, but to me, he's more of a blend of Allen and Williams than just a Williams protege, in my opinion. So we'll see how it pans out, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just, Ryan, and we won't belabor this point. We'll obviously go, there's other picks to talk about, but why sign Williams to an extension the offseason before if you're going to sort of have your head set here? And that's the, when you sort of put these decisions together in sequence, this is where it doesn't make a lot of sense. And to me, it really felt like it was a panic move, that they panicked in the war room. I don't think they anticipated this scenario playing out, where they had so many of their guys that they liked on the board, and which voice wins out, I think, was in question. And I think this was a panic move in my mind. So it's sort of telling a little bit about their organization to a certain extent, that they either didn't map out this scenario, or they didn't really know who to trust in sort of a moment of truth from a management perspective.
Yeah, or he could have been their guy all along. I don't think they panicked. They could have. I don't think they panicked, though.
This is not your guy all along. This is not the guy. If this is the guy all along, then Telesco's not the right guy for this job.
Well, that's been in question for 9 years, so you're not alone in that. Yeah, I mean, it's in last point, and I'm not comparing these 2 guys at all. So I don't want that to be misheard. But you look at 3 years ago, draft, loaded wide receiver room. You have Ruggs go first, and then Jerry Jeudy goes next, and then CeeDee Lamb goes next, then Justin Jefferson goes next. At the time, Jeudy was seen as the far along favorite. Then it was CeeDee Lamb, and then it was Ruggs for his speed, and then probably Justin Jefferson mixed in there just because of the LSU pedigree and what he was able to do. And far and away, Justin Jefferson has come out to be the best of that draft class. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying you can rely on that, but it could be, hey, if this was the Chargers guy and they got him, and maybe it was early based on some other receivers on the board, but they think he adds more versatility than one of the other guys do. He has better size. We'll see. Obviously, I'm just playing the positive spin on it, but I do feel that way in some regard to the pick. But we'll see. We never know. That's the beauty of this thing. We don't know until we know 2 years later. Who would have thought Justin Jefferson would have been the best receiver, arguably in football, or top 3 when he was taken
For sure.
the 4th in that draft class? So that's what makes these things fun. Now this pick, I'm curious your thoughts on it. Was it too high? Was it right? Does it fit their scheme? We love him obviously as a player. Tuli Pelotu out of USC. Our guy goes in round 2 to the Chargers to play I'll give my analysis after, so I want to get your thoughts on it. They get their edge here in the 2nd.
Yeah, Ryan, I think this was I think a great pick considering what happened in the 1st round. And I think that obviously Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, 13.5 sacks at SC, has just an understanding of the nuance of the game to sort of get to the quarterback, and really sort of understands the game. I think it was a little high, as much as I love Tui, but I think after that 1st round, I think they had to sort of go edge. And they had to go with a guy that A, they knew really well, B, was proven on the field, and C, could kind of come in and help right away, maybe at the expense of a little bit of upside down the line. And so when you sort of factor in, obviously, the Bosa situation in terms of health, Mac in terms of age, and who they sort of brought in, I think it's a really nice compliment to, your pure sort of inside backer in a Kendricks. And now you have Tui Pelotu there. And I think Tui Pelotu with the next guy, who was actually my favorite pick of the whole draft for the Chargers, I think when you sort of put all the pieces together, it was a really nice addition.
Yeah, I mean, I love Thule. I try not to get biased in these when our SC or UCLA guys go, just because I'm so thrilled for them. You know, a lot of these guys we get to know, whether it's guests on podcasts or seeing, excuse me, at practice or whatnot. And so I was ecstatic that he's staying here in LA. But I think it's a good pick, and obviously the production speaks for itself. What he was able to do last year at SC, leading the Pac-12 in sacks, 22 tackles for loss. I mean, that's unbelievable. And the fact that really the defense was so porous, and yet he was that good and that dominant as a kind of lone factor. It shows what kind of value they're able to get from him. But I'm really curious, Jamal, and then we'll move on because obviously we're already getting up halfway through here, is where they truly will use him. You know,
Yeah.
he played more at SC, kind of in that 3-tech, 5-tech, could kind of slide in. He's not a speed rusher. You know, he's a tactician. He's great with his hands. He's very smart and cerebral. And so I don't see him as a true, you know, not a way outside edge guy that's going to play like spot or fill in, should I say, for Bosa or Mac. I see him more as like a Morgan Fox complement, either on the other side of Morgan Fox or subbing in and out for Morgan Fox in line next to the likes of Bosa or Mac. Now, will that happen? We'll see. He'll have to put back on some weight, as he lost weight to become an edge, if you will, going into the draft, playing around 280-ish, 285 in college, slimmed down to about 266 for the combine. So that's what I'm really interested to see where they really use him. But either way, I think he'll be a great addition, and you know, love that he's staying here in LA.
I completely agree, Ryan. I think he's going to be a compliment. He's going to be on the field with those guys more in line. I totally agree, because I think the athleticism and his frame and his understanding of the game is actually more in line. I think people got a little enamored with the 13 and a half sacks and the 22 tackles for loss last year. Hard not to, but that was truthfully more a function of USC's offense than it was Tui Pelotu's sort of ability as a pass rusher. SC just put so much pressure on opposing teams on offense to have to go shot for shot. You had obviously coined the term last year, 4 stops and you win the game. And so much of that was needing to constantly throw the ball, really needing to sort of force the ball down the field on 3rd and long, going for it on 4th. So he had, you know, in terms of usage rate and in terms of opportunities for sacks, Tui Pelotu actually had a lot more opportunities than most guys at the collegiate level last year. And so he was sort of a volume sack guy. He was kind of like the Allen Iverson of pass rushers last year, because the FGAs were just so high in terms of the basketball analogy. I completely agree with you. His skill set, though, at the next level is much more in line. And I think it's going to be a compliment. He has the ability, Ryan, to be a starter on this team very, very quickly, just given the skill set.
Yep. Totally agree. So I'm really excited to see how they use him, and, you know, what Staley does creatively to get him in line, outline, whatever, using different schematically, and it should be a lot of fun. So great pick there. So, all right, next pick in round 3. And I believe you just alluded to this was your favorite pick of theirs. For me, when the pick first came in, I was honestly scratching my head a bit. And then the more I read up on it, the more I thought about it, as you should, as everyone should with any draft. I've actually kind of fallen in love with this draft pick, and that's Daiyan Henley, linebacker out of Washington State. But I'll let you start. Your thoughts on this pick for the Bolts?
Yeah, my favorite pick of all, again, because of the versatility that it provides you in the front 7, Ryan. And, you know, last year, Washington State was a very undersized team defensively. They have been historically. And Henley, what really sort of impressed me so much, got a chance to watch him live. You and I both did, you know, at the Coliseum last year. 106 tackles last year at Washington State, but then also 4 sacks, 4 interceptions. You know, that sort of tells you all you need to know about his ability to sort of be manipulated anywhere on the field in terms of front 7. He sort of has that, you know, in many ways, kind of that hybrid backer safety kind of feel to him. And, you know, sort of when you're sort of rotating a Derwin James and needing him to kind of get a blow and be fresh for the key moments in the game in the second half, you could potentially put Henley in some similar spots that you would with Derwin. And he's going to be very comfortable in that situation because that's where he was in college. So this is going to be a vital rotational piece here. I think he's going to be a tremendous glue guy on this defense. And at, you know, for their 3rd pick in the, you know, in the 3rd round, this was, in terms of value, this was my favorite pick and their best pick of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. Fell in love the more I thought about it. And the other piece that he adds along with the versatility is being one of the best cover backers in this
Yeah.
entire draft. And that's like the one thing since Staley's gotten to the Chargers that they just haven't had. And they've tried Kenneth Murray in tons of different scenarios, whether it was lining him up on the edge, whether it was making him back to inside, whether it was in coverage, whether it was man to man, whether it was zone. And it just hasn't really fit for Murray. And he may end up being the odd man out with Henley coming in and obviously the signing of Kendricks, depending how Kendricks' first year goes. And they didn't pick up Murray's fifth-year option. Now, obviously, if he plays well, they'll certainly want to bring him back. But yeah, I love Henley in that regard. The coverage piece is going to be great, especially with you see who these guys have to play every in the AFC West, seeing Kelsey all the time and seeing these other great tight ends in the league. If you can finally have a backer that can cover those guys, you don't have to use one of your secondary guys. That's huge. And like you alluded to, if need be, you can drop him in the back end and he can play that kind of pseudo safety linebacker role. You could even blitz him off the edge if you want to do some crazy NASCAR packages because of his athleticism and his speed and his sideline to sideline capabilities. So yeah, love the pick to Henley. Luke just asking this question. I think they definitely will still run a 3-4.
Yep.
But again, nowadays 4-3-3-4 really mean nothing because they're running out of nickel and dime so often. I mean, how many times you see on the field one linebacker in the Staley system with 4 or 5 defensive linemen and then a bunch of secondary guys. So technically 3-4, but I wouldn't even put much stock in that. So all right, moving to round 4. This is where the Chargers got their juice at receiver. Darius Davis, running mate at TCU, their second TCU player taken in the draft, wouldn't be their last, but certainly has the speed, will most likely take over kickoff return and punt return duties since they lost their last one, obviously. And so they get kind of a guy here that has speed for receiver, but also fills in a much needed slot in the return game. So your thoughts overall on Davis in the 4th?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously they needed the speed. They got Davis, 5'8", 165, ran a
Tutu Atwell.
4.36. Tutu Atwell, exactly. Which that's why I don't love the pick, to be very honest with you. Here's my gripe with kind of the overall kind of strategic thinking. I would have loved to have seen the Chargers get a speed guy from an individual that legitimately you could see as a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. Davis at 5'8", 165 is just so small. Now, hopefully he proves us all wrong. I just don't see him as a true wide receiver 3 or 4 for that matter. He's going to get, a couple snaps at receiver, obviously some go routes, but he's really going to make his bread and butter in the return game, both from a punt as well as a kickoff coverage perspective. I mean, that's important in terms of the return game. I just wish they sort of channeled, the speed into a true rotational receiver. Yep. And I think they got a piece from Johnstone and then they got a piece from Davis. I wish that was just all in one player. And there were guys there that were closer to that one player. So that's where, Ryan, I still have a healthy sense of skepticism. But in terms of pure speed, obviously Davis is as fast as they come. He sort of lit it up in the Big 12 in the return game and really set up TCU for success as an explosive offense over the course of their magical season. But again, at 5'8", 165, how much can you really expect him to be kind of a rotational, true, wide receiver 3 or 4?
Yeah, and that I agree with you with. Like, I think it's a fine pick. They're going to get usage out of him for that. But when you look at the size there, and obviously, hopefully, he can put some weight on. But you can't. I'm not saying anyone's doing this, but you can't look at Tyreek Hill and say, okay, that's what we can get because he is not the norm. Like he is the one small guy that actually like has made it into a true wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and Tyreek Hill is like 4.16. Okay, yeah. So like there's a ton of guys who are 4.36, 4.38, 4.34 at 5'8". Those are I don't want to say a dime a dozen, but that's definitely a more commoditized size and speed. Tyreek Hill is 1 of 1. I mean, that guy, even if it's 4.1, it might even be a stretch. It might be 4.06. I mean, in terms of, he's a world-class sprinter.
Yeah, exactly. So the size definitely is concerned. The big thing for me when you take someone, and again, I think this was honestly more of a special teams pick, and then he'll come in here and there. But the issue that and we'll see how Kellen Moore can get creative with this. But when you have a player that is strictly a one-trick pony, if you will, for a lack of better words, that is basically going to come and run go routes and quote unquote blow the top off defenses. Well, if that's all he can do, guess what? The defense kind of knows that. And then they go
Exactly.
too high shell and keep two guys deep,
Yep.
and you never get an opportunity to throw it to him because he can never get open, because as soon as he's on the field, if he's only running 10 routes a game or less, like I'm thinking specifically when oh God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. When what's his name came to the Rams and it did not work just recently in
Deshaun.
2021, when Deshaun Jackson came to the Rams, that's all they used him for was go routes. And so every time he was out there, the defense it worked in like the week 2, and then they basically never had a catch again because of that. And so it'll be up to Kellen Moore if they truly see Darius as a true piece of this offense. It's how do they get him involved without just the go route, so they're not basically showing their cards, giving their tell every time he's on the field, which I think Kellen Moore's a good enough offensive coordinator. They'll do that. But I just want fans to kind of think about that, yes, when you draft a guy for speed, that's important because he does allow you that what the Chargers haven't had for the last 2 years, but you also have to have a versatile guy that can do different things so the defense doesn't know what's coming every time he's out there, or it'll never work and fans are still going to be upset. So understand the pick. Definitely will be a great special teamer. And then we'll see how he's involved in the offense before I can give like a true kind of great analysis on it. So round 5, they go back to the offensive line, add some depth here with Jordan McFadden, guard out of Clemson. I think this will be a nice depth piece. You go to a program that's put out some really good trench players in general, offensive line and defensive line. So when you're just looking at pedigree there, I think that checks the boxes. But your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I think you can't go wrong with offensive line depth. We've talked about it being a physical game. McFadden, from a blue blood program. What I'm really impressed with him, Ryan, is he had 989 snaps last year in college football. That's the 4th most ever for a tackle in the history of college football. So when you talk about durability and being an every down player at the offensive tackle position at the collegiate level, I mean, this guy answers the mail, and I think he can step in at any moment and really provide great productivity in the case of an injury, or work his way up in terms of being a starter at some point in the future and being a really nice rotational piece. He was the ACC's top blocker in 2022, and so not only did he play for a great program, a program that relied very heavily on pass and run blocking, but excelled very much. So at that spot, Ryan, in the 5th round there, this was a great pick to sort of fortify the depth.
Yep. And so we then go into the 6th round. Scott Matlock, defensive tackle, Boise State, big boy, 6'4", 308. Would think this will be a depth piece for that nose tackle position behind Sebastian Joseph Day and behind Austin Johnson if needed. And obviously Otito Ogbonnia will be coming back from injury, but a pretty severe injury. So we'll see when he's kind of slotted back in the lineup. So I think this is a nice depth piece. Guy had a pretty productive college career over at Boise State and just a big workhorse that, you see the guy on camera and you just want to root for him. So no problem with it.
No problem with it. In the 6th round, you're kind of looking for depth pieces. And, he had a really nice year at Boise State, 49 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. So it showed that he could clog up the middle. He could also get to the quarterback from that nose position. So not only does he have sort of the girth and the size to be a space eater, but he's good enough with his hands. He's good enough with his feet to actually get vertical a little bit and sort of get to the quarterback. So really nice piece there. And in the 6th round, for given what your needs are, that's right up there in terms of BPA for the Chargers in terms of kind of their needs and getting some value.
Yep. So, all right, final pick, and we'll go this quickly. Love this kid, love this player. Didn't love this pick for the Chargers personally. Max Duggan, quarterback there to be quarterback 3 or maybe 2 one day in this quarterback room. Your thoughts on taking Duggan there with their final pick?
I don't know why you waste a pick there on quarterback. I mean, you've got one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. I mean, this guy's going to be carrying a clipboard for the next 10 years unless, God forbid, something, catastrophic happens, which it won't, knock on wood, for the Chargers. So, I mean, at that point, you're in a situation there where the backup room isn't terrible, and there were guys from an undrafted perspective that you could pick up. You could pick up vets. So this one just felt like they burned a pick for no reason. And so, That's
Yep.
also why, as a principle of behavioral economics, Ryan, it started with a thud and it ended with a thud, the Chargers draft. And, in the middle, there were a couple of nice pieces there. But when you start, deflatingly and then you end deflatingly, it really sort of, dampers the impression of your pick there. Love Duggan, love the heart, but he's sort of your classic James Vanderbeek varsity blues, kind of high school, college quarterback, where I don't know if any of really the toolbox or the skill sets translate to an NFL game.
Yeah, I completely agree. It just felt like a burned pick. I mean, you have Easton Stick obviously on the roster, who
Exactly.
they keep saying they like a lot. Now, I don't know if he's truly they feel comfortable as a true backup, but I know one of the biggest qualms of Chargers fans last year was the continual decision to carry three quarterbacks on the game day roster. And now at this pick, it seems like they're going to be doing that again and taking one of those slots away from either another receiver or a running back or one of these other positions to have a third quarterback that is seemingly doing nothing. So, we'll talk about this later in the week when we go to undrafted free agents. I thought they could have taken some flyers here on a tight end or something, which they ended
Yep.
up getting Michael Ezike as an undrafted
Yeah.
free agent. So it worked out fine. I think they actually got a really good undrafted free agent list, which again, we'll go over here in a few days. But to me, it was just why burn a pick on a QB that's never going to play?
Why burn a pick on a QB that's never going to play, especially when you haven't really sort of quite answered the mail? And to Luke's question, who would you have taken in the 7th instead of Duggan? You know what? I would have taken a flyer on another receiver, tight end. You know who was available? Jake Bobo was available. PFF's highest grade for a
Yep.
Pac-12 receiver went undrafted. I would have gone Bobo there in the 7th round, to sort of complement some of that receiving room.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll see how it kind of looks. And the last point, because then we'll wrap up here and we got to get into some USC talk. But I thought Luke had a good point here earlier I want to bring back. I'm just saying, I think all players we got in the draft are proven and are what we needed with all the injuries we had last year. They're ready to play if we need them. And I think this is a very valid point. When we talked Rams, Jamal, just
Yes.
at the top of the hour, Rams love drafting projects that they can develop. They love drafting injury prone players that they think are going to buck that trend. This Chargers draft was all guys that had very productive careers, were healthy almost their entire careers. And they basically said, these are guys that we feel like we can plug and play right off the bat. We don't have to develop and necessarily coach because they've done so much over their entire collegiate career. So there definitely was a trend here with all 7 picks in that regard, which I
Totally
get.
agree. I think it was guys that contributed in a significant way at the collegiate level, and guys that you knew were mature enough off the field and brought the productivity on the field where they could step in and from day one be rotational pieces or take on a filler role in the event of an injury. And those are the guys that you want when you're right on the cusp. When you're trying to make a run here and you feel like you've got a core and you're adding to it, you're trading some of that future huge upside for a lower ceiling, but what is it going to give me right away? And I think in that regard, especially when you look at a Henley and a Tui Pelotu, and some of the others in that middle piece, they definitely answered the mail there. So for me overall, Ryan, it was a B. It had the ability to be an A, even a high A, if they hit, with the opening and they hit with the end there. But the middle 5 picks were pretty solid. It was overall a B for me.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to go B also. So we're in agreement there. Even though I like the Quentin Johnson pick a little better than you, or a little more than you, I should say. The Duggan pick was enough where I brought it down a little bit, and that's no disrespect to him, but I just think they could have gotten something there. But I think they did a lot of good stuff and undrafted stuff that we'll talk to later in the week. So both B's from the Madman and myself for these Chargers. Thank you all for hanging out with us. That's all the time we got for Monday Night Live for Chargers. We got plenty of other Chargers content on LFB Network. Henley was actually on our Chargers Unleashed show, so you can go check that out. Go to lfbnetwork.com and you can look at that interview. We got others coming for you. And like I said, later in the week, we'll get into the undrafted free agents and dive into that. So thank you for all your questions. Luke, I know you dropped a bunch in here. We appreciate you so much. And for any others that were hanging out with us, dropping questions, thank you all. We'll talk to you later in the week. If you want to stick around for Trojan Talk, Trojan Huddle, we'll be live here in just a few minutes. So see everyone.